right, welcome back to Texas A&M Aggies Live, part of the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host, Cameron Honesty, joined again by my co-host, as usual, Cannon Torres. We have Mike Chen back on the show from Fighting Irish Wire, part of our home, my other job with Aggies Wire, College Wire, as part of USA Today Sports. One of the best guys in the business covering Notre Dame. We love to praise our lead writers there. I think we do a pretty damn good job, as I say so myself, of covering each and every college team you can think of. So either way, we are now on the precipice of Texas A&M versus Notre Dame. This is the game, long-awaited rematch that I think all of us have been waiting for, going back to last season, going back to Texas A&M's opening season loss during the 2024 season to Notre Dame in Kyle Field. That was a 20-13 win for the Fighting Irish. It was a very sloppy game for A&M. It had a lot to do with then starting quarterback Connor Wegman, who was dealing with a shoulder injury that we found out later, like a couple weeks later in the year, that really took that offense backwards. I believe the only touchdown A&M had in that game was a goal line score by senior running back Le'Veon Moss, and they really couldn't get the ball down the field really at all. And Notre Dame had, I believe it was really just two big plays in that game from Jeremiah Love, their star running back. I think it was like a 20 and 40-yard touchdown. I have to go look back, but it was one of those games to where I think it was yesterday during Mike Uncle's presser, he talked about the type of game that he expects to see. And while A&M obviously has one of the more explosive passing games now with transfer wide receivers Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver, who have been dynamite so far in the first two games. A&M scored 86 points in their first two. This has been the strength of the offense. He still said this is going to be one of those grinded out type of games where big plays are going to matter a lot for both teams. And he believes it's going to be a similar game to last season. But I will say that it's pretty murky right now on my end. I don't know if Cannon will agree, but A&M's defense has had its moments where they've looked, kind of asleep at the wheel in the first two games. Now they've rebounded in the second half and looked great, including the senior edge Cassius Howe. We could spend all day talking about his 3 consecutive sacks, which really kind of lit college football on fire during Saturday's kind of, the game that not everybody except for A&M fans and some other people were watching, being that was against Utah State. But I think that was a good sign. I think the defense really woke up outside of a couple players that were a little behind, and just, I think maybe looking ahead to this matchup, because all we've heard this week is these guys are ready. Mario Craver, as I just mentioned, one of their new wide receivers, and senior linebacker Scooby Williams spoke today. Both pretty much had the same thing to say. We've been circling this game for a while. We know that this is the measuring stick for us. And again, that's as true as it can be, because you were supposed to be UTSA. You were supposed to be Utah State by 20-plus points. That's expected compared to Notre Dame, which we're about to get to. Opened the season on the road against Miami in one of the better games to start. We've had some really good ones to start this year. But playing behind most of the time, Miami had some big scores, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. They were up. Miami was up 21-7 at one point. Notre Dame fought back, but the clock was against them. Miami got all the way down with just seconds remaining to hit a game-winning field goal, and that puts Notre Dame 0-1 to start the season. So I'm just going to ask you quickly, how is Notre Dame feeling right now? And obviously Marcus Freeman, I didn't see a lot this week from him yet. I haven't looked at the quotes or anything personally. That's on my end. But how are they feeling about this matchup? Do they feel like this is a great matchup for them after the loss, that they can easily rebound at home? Or do they feel like this is just another huge hurdle they have to get over? Because as we know, if they start 0-2, their college football playoff dreams could be dead by then.
Yeah, I think they know what's at stake. I think it's pretty clear. When you look at Notre Dame's schedule, preseason, you had 3 ranked teams on there. Boise State losing week 1, they dropped out of the rankings, so now they have 2. So they know the significance of the game. As far as how the team's feeling, Freeman really didn't go into too much detail during his press conference yesterday about how the team actually is feeling. So I'll tell you what I'm feeling. I was extremely confused at the offensive game plan. They started off with, I think it was 8 of 9 of their first offensive plays were pass plays. For a first-time true redshirt freshman starting quarterback in CJ Carr. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. They ran a lot of screenplays, which like I get it, I understand. You want to get the young man's feet wet and get him some completions, get him some confidence, so move down the field a little bit more with the vertical game. But they never really went to the vertical game. I think he had 2 passes over 20 yards, and he completed both of them. So it was a bit strange, the game plan that Mike Denbrock ran, because it's felt to me as if what he was doing with CJ Carr is exactly what he did last year with Riley Leonard. I mean, Carr ran the ball way more than I thought he would. Designed runs mainly. It wasn't just scrambles. He actually was running, they were running quarterback draws and all that. And that's not his game. So I think that, a little bit of self-scouting this week will help the offense and defensively as well. The Irish pride themselves on line play, and they got beat on both sides of the line against Miami, which I thought was very surprising. Entering the year, you've got, Miami's line has 2 really good guys on there who obviously made some big plays. And Bain was just all over the place. I mean, he had a massive game. And then, the Irish offensive line, they struggled all game as well. So, aside from the center, Ashton Craig, I think everybody else on Pro Football Focus's grades were under, 50, which is not good. That's really bad. Anthony Knapp, who was a true freshman last year and started pretty much immediately, he big time struggles. You got to give credit to the Miami defensive line though. They played really well, like extremely well. But defensively, I thought that they played less aggressive than I thought they would. Marcus Freeman had talked a lot about how he wanted to generate pressure without blitzing, and they weren't able to do that. And they started blitzing a little bit more. And if you look at the numbers too, Carson Beck, not so great when he's under pressure. When he's got time to throw, he's really, really good. Most quarterbacks are like that too. And so without putting the pressure on them, they really struggled. There weren't big plays. Miami wasn't ripping off big chunks, but they were just methodically driving down the field, wearing out the Notre Dame defense. And, that's why they gave up as many points as they did, which it happens in big games. You could probably give some credit to the weather. It's hard to replicate South Florida when you're in South Bend, Indiana. Like, let's be real here. The humidity is different. You can't, unless you're in it, like you guys in Texas, that was something that last year that Notre Dame was very adamant on the weather down there, especially in August. You're talking about the hot weather, and that's something that they don't get in the Midwest. And, I think that definitely made an impact because towards the third and fourth quarter, you see guys tapping out because they were gassed. And I think that had a lot to do with it as well. Obviously disappointing to take an L in a top 10 matchup, but to lose by 3 points on the road, especially with the College Football Playoff Committee changing the way they're viewing how they're going to rank teams and pick teams into the playoff, into the 12 teams. This is going to qualify as a good loss for them, but there's not the margin for error for Notre Dame is really thin now. It is very thin.
Yep. Got anything, Cannon?
No, I think he hit it right on the head. I think I was watching that Miami Notre Dame game that night, coming back from what was a long day of just kind of getting over the weekend, and it was just nice to see that Sunday night we kind of get this marquee matchup. Who were we going to get on both sides? Was it either Carson Beck, who was going to look a little bit better, or was it this new quarterback in CJ Carr just kind of thriving in a Mike Denbrock offense? We didn't know what we were going to get going into that night, but I think I agree with you, Mike, in that Mike Denbrock, I don't think exactly game planned up exactly what was probably needed for a guy like CJ Carr in that game. But I think what was a little bit more telling was the amount of touches that Jeremiah Love got in that game. Now, Jeremiah Love has been, heralded as a top, if not the top running back in the entire country, especially behind this Notre Dame offensive line, who you so pointed out that they take pride in that offensive line. So that was what I was looking at through that game. I don't know if you can attribute that to the amount of pressure that the Miami defensive line and front seven were able to come up with, but I think that 10 touches along the ground is probably just not enough for a guy like Jeremiah Love, who we've seen be able to take over games just by himself. So could we potentially see in this next game where they, instead of this past game against Miami, where it seems like they underutilized his talents, maybe could this be a game where they just kind of overuse his talents and just kind of see where they are after this game or at the half?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think that they're going to try to give him the ball a little bit more. Marcus Freeman on Monday talked about the RPOs that they were running and how CJ Carr's decisions probably weren't the best on a lot of those. He opted to throw as opposed to giving the ball to Love. They might end up taking that option out of his hands for this game because of his decisions on that. You know, you're looking, when you're running an RPO, you're looking at the ends to see where they're crashing down at, right? If they're coming inside the line, then yeah, you're going to want to fake the handoff and then go quick to the outside. But if they're staying on the outside and you've got a lane on the inside, you're going to give it to Jeremiah Love, right? And I think that they were doing a good job of covering up Love's holes there, which forced Carr to throw the ball a little bit more. So I'll be interested to see, you know, how that works. But, you know, 10 touches, I believe is what Love got in the first game. That's not enough. You know, you're talking about a guy who over the offseason, everyone hyped up as a Heisman candidate. And as you said, Cannon, the top running back in the country. And, you know, for him not to be that workhorse, you know, I expected 20 to 25 carries out of him against Miami. And he fell well short of that, like extremely short. So, yeah, I do see them giving the ball to Love a good amount more. Now, I think he caught 4 passes as well. So he got about 14 touches of the game. But in a primetime matchup, that was not the time to say, all right, well, we're going to limit your touches and kind of try to rest you. Now, I get the fact that he was not very efficient with those touches. You know, I think he was right around 2 yards a carry, and Jadarian Price, the backup, was much more efficient on his touches. So I could see them definitely leaning a little bit more on the run, and to get Love's touches up, regardless of the outcome, because I think that part of it is if you're going to run so many times, it's going to force the safeties to creep up, and then you're going to have opportunities to go over the top of them and make big plays. And I don't think that they accomplished that against Miami. So I think that that's kind of the goal, is what we're going to see this weekend. I think there's going to be a lot more emphasis on the run game. I'd like to see CJ Carr attempt closer to 20 passes as opposed to around 30. You know, limit the opportunities there a little bit more. I have a ton of confidence in him. I think he's a very good player. But to give him, you know, the full keys to the offense in game one and just kind of let him do his thing, I don't think that was the right choice. I think they should have dumbed it down a little bit more for him. Not that he's not a smart guy. I just think that, you know, the first-time starter on the road against a top 10 opponent, you have to do what's best for your players. And I really don't think that Mike Denbrock accomplished that. I was kind of disappointed in his game plan, to be honest with you. And I do think that over the 2 weeks since they played, you know, I guarantee you they've gone over the tape. They've gone over everything. They realized where they missed and what they need to do better. And I think one of the big things they need to do better is get Jeremiah Love the ball. So, yeah, right. And I definitely think you're going to see a lot more Jeremiah Love on Saturday.
Yeah. And I think Elko and Jay Bateman and the rest of their defensive staff is ready for that. There was a big focus.
Oh, yeah.
After the UTSA game, which obviously me and Cannon reviewed last Tuesday. And, you know, their run defense was horrible. And they weren't, and like you said, they weren't setting the edge. There was a stretch run from Robert, UTSA's running back. I think he's leading the country in rushing. So, you know, he's just a really good running back, but they weren't doing their job. And he got in the end zone once on a short run, and then he had the 75-yarder where it just broke open in one of the gaps. And it was all run fit issues, right? And it was actually good that happened in the first game opposed to happening in the second game right before facing Notre Dame and having to really hurry up and go, okay, well, now we're facing this elite running back duo who shredded us last year. So, you better play better. It's like, no, it was good to see that finally things tightened up against Utah State. I believe at one point they were allowing like 17 yards on the ground, and they ended up with 78 and some garbage time runs. So they will be ready. And I think that obviously starts with the running backs. That yes, they need to set the edge. Guys like defensive end Dayon Hayes, Cassius Howell, they need to be ready for what they're going to bring scheme wise. And it's going to be very similar, I think, to what we saw last year in Kyle Field. I don't think there's going to be a huge difference on how they deploy the run. It's just, can A&M's defense hold up early? Can they stop it early? Can they force Carr to pass? And that's the biggest thing. If you force him to do this, that gives A&M's defense a better shot at deterring him, because he is young, he is talented. And I'm not going to see, we can't really take away anything from Carr's skill set. He showed what he can do. I believe it's that one touchdown against Miami where he was just running around and trying to finally found an open guy. That was a vet type of move. So, I mean, I'm not surprised if we see this kid take the next step later in the year and really ascend, depending on how his wide receivers help him out. But it's kind of the same thing as Texas A&M quarterback Marcel Reed, is that, we've been talking about all offseason, is he going to take the next step as a passer? Well, being that he now has Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver at wide receiver, that's helping out a lot. Carr doesn't really have those type of weapons in the passing game right now. And Notre Dame will really need that running game to be the strength going forward, to allow Carr to mature, get better in the pocket, because he will be a better play action quarterback. He will have, those games where he's leading the way. But right now, it is a hard game to really predict and how the outcome will come, because I believe that if A&M's defense shows up, this is going to be a low-scoring affair that is going to, and I said at the beginning of the show, Mario Craver kind of said today, we want to show off that this offense can travel, because right now they've shredded secondaries, but they've shredded two secondaries that aren't considered the best. Can they do this against one of the best secondaries? We don't know. But if they can stop the run, if they can keep them at bay, then this is going to be a game that's going to come down to Marcel Reed and CJ Carr.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've watched a little bit of Reed. He is absolutely electric with the ball in his hands. He gets outside of the pocket and he's going to create problems. I could see Notre Dame trying to spy him a little bit. I think that one of their backups, I think, would be best suited at that, and Kingston Villalma Asu. He played really well this past game, but unfortunately, he's not a starter, and he didn't play. He probably wasn't on the field as much as he needed to be. And again, that's something that I talked about earlier with the self-scouting. I think Notre Dame's going to go back, and they released a depth chart, and he was still second on the depth chart. But I still think that he's going to play a good amount. I have confidence that Drake Bowen could do some spying as well. I mean, I don't think they're going to spy every play. I think they're going to pick and choose when they're going to spy. Third and long, second and short potentially, just due to the fact that if you're just trying to get those extra couple of yards, Reed can get to the outside and break a big one. So. I think that the quarterback battle is obviously the one that we're going to be, focused on the most. But, again, it's going to come down to line play, just like game one for the Irish. And, last year, that game was won because of Notre Dame's offensive line and defensive line. It wasn't because of the skill position players, the running backs, the holes were open. And when you look at both teams, they're both very stout on their lines. And I think that, the quarterback play will be important, especially down the stretch if it's close. And I think that unfortunately for Notre Dame, I think the advantage goes to Reed because of the experience. He's done it before. He's been there before. He's played in bigger games before. He's got all of the majority, not all of last year, but the majority of last year as the starter, right? Coming into this season, there was no question marks as to who was going to be your quarterback. You knew that Reed was going to be the guy. So all of spring, all of summer, fall camp, he's the one, unquestioned. Whereas Notre Dame's situation, him and Kenny Minchie, Carr and Minchie were getting split reps throughout the fall. In the spring, they didn't name a quarterback until 2 weeks before the season started, when fall camp ended, right? So I think that is an advantage for you guys just because of the reps and the experience. But yeah, I do think that both quarterbacks are going to have to make big plays in this one for either team for them to win. And
Is
I would say that Reed has a little bit of advantage.
The more I think about this game, like if you just put it in a vacuum and you told me like the outcome of the game was like 28-21 or 22, but didn't give me the teams, I don't think I'd know which way I'd point at that point. And the one thing that kind of sticks out to me, like you said, is Marcel Reed and his ability to kind of have these electric or takeover plays. We saw it against Florida. We saw it against LSU when they came in the second half this past year. But is that really the key to this game for Notre Dame, or the entire game script overall is kind of who is Marcel Reed in this game? Because if Notre Dame is able to contain him and not let them use his legs, I feel like that could be something where Notre Dame kind of looks at it as a win, because he's so dynamic when he's off of his running legs. And even this past week, we saw some pretty great throws from him off balance, especially one towards the end zone with Casey Concepcion, who I've got to admit is probably the one I'm looking at again this week, because of how Malachi Tony, who true freshman from Miami, was able to kind of, I don't want to say expose what we think is a very, very good secondary for Notre Dame, but was able to take advantage of some matchups one-on-one, because that's what Notre Dame is going to do is play those man-to-man.
Yep.
So is that really what it kind of boils down to, is what Notre Dame is kind of able to do with Marcel Reed?
Yeah, I think the key is they want to keep him in the pocket and make him throw the ball. I don't think that Notre Dame wants to see him scrambling around and making plays with his legs going off script, because I think that's where he could hurt them a lot. And when you think about it, I believe Reed has not thrown an interception this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions.
Yeah, the jump, that second year jump, is usually pretty significant, especially throwing the ball. He's understanding, what DBs are trying to do with him, where he needs to go with the ball, when to throw a guy open, right? And I think that Carr has those traits, but he doesn't have the experience, and that to me is super significant in big games like this. And I think that's why Miami had the edge at the end of the game, is because Carson Beck, he's been there before. He did it in Georgia, and that he had all this experience. And CJ Carr enters, and he has never been here before. Maybe at the high school level, but that's a completely different ballgame than you're talking about big time college football. So I think Marcel Reed is like kind of the X factor in this game, because if he gets outside of the pocket and he's starting to make plays with his legs, the defensive backs are going to be forced to move closer to the line to try and help and not create those running lanes. And then say he doesn't run and they're coming up, you're going to have wide receivers that are going to be over the top. They're going to be open. So that definitely is concerning for me, as I'm kind of prepping for the game and looking at, the A&M roster, because like you mentioned, those 2 wide receivers that you guys got, they're pretty good. I think one of them's a true freshman, correct?
Yeah, or both are redshirt freshmen.
Redshirt freshmen. Okay, so they don't have a ton of experience, but they've been in the program for a year, so they get it, right? Yeah. So, I think that Marcel Reed is the game plan on defense. Stop him. Keep him in the pocket. Don't let him make impromptu plays. Yeah, and if Notre Dame can accomplish that, I think they can have a very good game defensively. But they got to keep him in the pocket. That's a must. That's 100%. They have.
I definitely misspoke. I think Terry Bussey is a sophomore.
Terry Bussey is a sophomore. Craver is a sophomore.
Ashton Bethel Roman is the redshirt freshman.
Yes, and then Casey Concepcion's a junior. So
okay. Yeah. So they're not young. So you got some veterans. You got some veterans over there.
Are we expecting Casey Concepcion to kind of always be matched up with Leonard Moore?
I don't know. I think that you're looking at Leonard Moore obviously is on one side, and then Christian Gray's on the other. They're really high on Christian Gray. I think that you might, if Concepcion makes a couple big plays and Gray's covering him, then I could see them saying, "All right, Leonard, this is your guy. You're shadowing him the rest of the game." But I don't think that, Notre Dame doesn't necessarily say like, all right, I'm just going to take this one guy and that's it, right? Because you saw that in like, say like last year, it's obviously a new defensive coordinator and Chris Ash over Al Golden, but it's the scheme is very similar. What they're trying to accomplish is almost exactly the same, with obviously a couple tweaks into what Ash wants to do over what Golden wanted to do. But for the most part, they're gonna have 4 down linemen. They're gonna have 2 linebackers. And then the rest is going to be in the secondary. Almost always having a nickel out there. So I wouldn't say necessarily that Moore is going to shadow Concepcion for the whole game, but I could see, if he pops off a couple big ones, them just saying, all right, that's it. We don't want this anymore. We're going to put our best guy and your best guy, and hopefully he shuts them down. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. I don't know if they'll bracket coverage on them as well, because they run so much man. Those safeties, kind of have a little bit of free wheel on them to kind of either come up and make a stop in the run play or to play back, as the last line of defense. But it's hard to say whether or not you're going to see more on him the whole game. I could see Christian. I mean, like I said, they're really high on Christian Gray. I think they view him as 1A and 1B. I don't think that there's much in the coach's eyes as to one being better than the other, because I think they're both very good corners. But I think you could definitely see a mix of both of those two guys covering him.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a game that, I personally think is going to come down to quarterback play. Like we said with Marcel Reed, going back to last season, and Mike, I don't know how much A&M football you watched last season, but it got ugly to points where you would see Marcel Reed dip out of the pocket, try to make plays out of structure, and there just wouldn't be the separation and coverage for him to make a play. There was a couple in the Texas game, which major media people, I think that's the only game they watched of Marcel Reed, which is very annoying because they pretty much judge him by that. Forgetting that Texas had I don't know how many future NFL draft picks on that team. But Either way, I think even if he had a Concepcion or a Craver against Texas, you would have seen more completions early. You would have seen more chunk plays. And I'm not saying that that's going to translate in South Bend at night in one of the toughest environments to play. And I think that's why there's a lot of apathy, with some of the Aggie fan base that's going, well, this is going to be really, really tough. Well, but again, you got to remember, they've been waiting for this game for a long, long time. They understand the gravity of it. They understand that they got these new players from the transfer portal this offseason to compete in games like this. It wasn't just to get new players. It was going, this is where we were weakened. And I think one of the best games to kind of measure Marcel Reed's kind of ascendance as a team starter was against Auburn in that 4 overtime loss, where he was still making plays with his arm with a very average receiving core. I mean, there were drops in that game from Theo Malin-Olstrom, their junior tight end, that would have moved the chains, that probably would have ended the game. And it's and he threaded a couple throws to where personally I knew going into this season, watching that game in full capacity and watching it again, I'm going, okay, this is a kid who can get it done on the road in front of a tough environment. That was an Auburn team that sucked, but they sold out Jordan Hare, and that was a rowdy crowd that was all in on it. And I think it's going to be similar to Notre Dame, where, yeah, South Bend's different. It's the way the stadium's constructed. It's a little different than Jordan Hare. But again, he's right. I think he's ready for these moments. It's just he's got to show it. He's got to prove it. But I think on the other side, CJ Carr could be elevated, or he could be in a space where he's a little nervous. He knows that they're 0-1. They have to get this done. That's the thing I don't think a lot of people are talking about. I think a lot of people think, Notre Dame's 1-0 sometimes. Maybe they didn't pay attention and they're thinking, oh, this is a 2-0, 1-0 team and they're ready for A&M. Well, no. I think it was either Elko or another coach who had said, when you go into a week 0-1 or 0-2, you're not in good spirits. You're having to game plan again. You're not feeling good coming to the facility. You're going to on the fly fix these problems. And so that is something to watch. Is this team going to be 100% ready compared to A&M, who, yes, they had their problems in the first 2 games, but they outscored their first 2 opponents by 20-plus points. They had big plays on both sides of the ball. Marcel Reed is healthy after taking that hit that we mentioned at the top of the show. But yes, took a hit. He is going to be healthy. Mike Elko confirmed that. Same with left tackle Trey Zoon, which I'm going to be honest, I think that would be even worse if he was missing this game, because then they could really tee off against a younger player and backup Robert Borden, who has played well, but you do want your senior guy to start on the line. So I think these guys are ready. Personally, I think this team is ready to take on this challenge. I do think that Notre Dame is going to be very desperate in a lot of ways to lean on their strengths in the run game, really get their stars going. You know, they're going to be looking at that tape last year, but I don't know if that's going to help them a lot. Mike Elko was actually asked by, I believe it was Texas Ag's columnist, Owen Buchanan, would you have played Marcel Reed in that game last year? And he basically said, no. And I mean, good for Elko kind of sticking to his guns. He said no. But everybody did think, including myself, well, what if they did play Marcel Reed, even with the lack of experience,
right?
Ability to run, make plays with his legs, get those first downs that Connor Waybean couldn't get when the passing game was killing him. And, you know, it is one of those things where now you've got a seasoned vet now in Marcel Reed, who's, like we said, he won in Florida, in one of the hardest places to, like you talked about weather earlier, winning in the swamp, which, I mean, I'd probably pass out if I was there, just in the crowd of how humid it gets. And then obviously coming in and beating LSU at home. He has those kind of checkmark star-like games, right? And yes, he's had some bad ones, and that was why it was kind of split with the fan base of where they stood with Marcel Reed as a starter. But I think we've seen a lot, and I think these first two games we have gone out of them saying, well, these areas need to be cleaned up, but Marcel Reed looks damn good. And I don't think he's going to be the problem, because he's been circling this game too. He's been waiting for this challenge because he wants to kill that narrative. And he can't win big games, that he can't do it, that, you know, same old A&M. I think they all know that. I think even the new guys, which I think was kind of funny to hear Craver talk about. He wasn't even here last year, but he said, I got this thing circled because this is the benchmark. You want to shut down all that talk about A&M can't do this, can't do that. They can't get to the college football playoff. Win this game. It's going to go away, because then you get a week off to prepare for Auburn. You go into SEC play with a ton of momentum. And I think it's the same, you know, I don't know if it's the same for Notre Dame, because they really have to win this game and pretty much have to, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, go undefeated the rest of the year to even get to the college football playoff.
Yeah, no, I think, Cameron, I think you're right. I think you're going to see Notre Dame pull out all the stops. You know, I was a little bit surprised that they didn't run some sort of trick play on special teams. Last year they ran them all the time. You know, they ran them in huge moments too. You know, they weren't afraid to run a trick play in the national championship game. You know, they ran a bunch of them throughout the regular season, and different ones too. And you've got your third string quarterback is a Holder and Tyler Buckner, who was the starter a few years ago, transferred out, played at Alabama with his OC Tommy Rees. And then came back to Notre Dame to play lacrosse and walked on the football team. Last year he was a wide receiver, and now he's third string quarterback, and he's the number one holder. So you know, he can, you know, if there's a trick play, and he's throwing it, I think there's a lot of confidence in him doing it. But, you know, kind of back to the bigger picture, you're looking at a team that, like you said, Cameron, they're desperate. They know what's at stake. You know, their schedule is super front loaded this year. You know, the top two games are the first two games, and they know they go 0-2. They might not get back in the committee's graces because they you know, the schedule doesn't look like that. Now USC, they're looking a lot better, and they play them in the middle of the year. But, you know, going 1-2 against top 25 opponents, if they do beat USC, and they are ranked at the time, I'm not sure that's going to convince the college football playoff to put them in. So I think that they know the stakes. I think that you're going to see a team that's hungry, that knows, that understands what is at stake. Because, you know, you go 0-2, and, you know, unless you're Alabama, and not even this current Alabama, I'm talking Nick Saban's Alabama, you're probably not getting it. You know, like Saban would get the benefit of the doubt if he had two losses and maybe not win the SEC, right? But I just don't. There's one team, I think, in the country that could probably claim that right now, and that's Ohio State. I don't think that another team that would be viewed that highly to say, all right, well, you have the talent, like, you have the talent, you could run through the 12 teams, right? I don't think that, if Notre Dame does it, if they lose this one and, you're looking at, the end of the year and 10-2 record's still pretty damn good. But I don't know. I'd be leaning on the committee saying, all right, we're going to take somebody else because, their record against top 25 teams is not very good. And they didn't play, a difficult schedule. Now, if they catch fire, maybe there's a chance. Hard to say. But, I think right now you're going to look at a team that's going to put everything on the line, and they're going to try and pull out all the stops in order to get a win. So, I think that, you're going to see, I wouldn't say desperation, because I think that is, I don't think we're at the point of that yet. But I do think you're going to see a highly motivated team on Saturday night that knows what's at stake and knows that they need to get a W.
Yeah, and I think Ken probably agree. I think A&M, it's a very interesting spot for them because they technically don't need to win this game because they could easily afford, it's a non-conference game. They haven't won I saw this stat today. It was one of the Eagle writers, but I mean, they haven't won a non-conference ranked game since 1979. I think my parents were 20 years old at that time.
Ranked road game.
Ranked road game, non-conference. Yeah, so that's pretty incredible. It's kind of, it's equally as incredible as they haven't won in Baton Rouge since I was born. I think it was in 1994. So it's
definitely a story.
Yeah, it's crazy. But it's basically, they want to get this done because they feel like this could be the catalyst for their season. I think that, like I said, it's set up very oddly, right? Because Notre Dame, I think people thought that was unfair. They got a week off to prepare while A&M had to play a game. That happens all the time because it's the way to kind of, gain viewership. And this game's going to get a lot of eyeballs.
Sure.
And because, I've already seen the marketing for it and stuff. And that's just a way to say, well, A&M's undefeated and this team's 0-1. They're a little desperate and, they're playing at home and NBC this, NBC that. So it's like, yes, it's a primetime matchup between two very similar teams. But I think we both kind of hit the nail on the head that this is just very interesting from a storyline perspective of how are they going to show up? Because like you said, if I was looking at, the desperate team, I'd always take the desperate team, which would be Notre Dame, because I'd say, well, they're going to come out even harder and hungrier and they're at home and their fans are going to be behind them. But at the same time, the Aggie fan base travels very, very well. And they're going to, I know a lot of people already going to that game. There's going to be a lot of maroon and white there that I think a lot of people don't expect. So I don't think it's going to be as tumultuous for A&M as it would be at other stadiums. Personally, I could be wrong. It could just be all Notre Dame people. We'll see. But yeah, how is A&M really going to come out? Are they going to come out stronger? Are they going to come out turning the ball over early and Notre Dame taking advantage of that? We've seen that in the past. With certain A&M teams, or I think one of the ones I can think of is against Alabama a couple of years ago, where I think it was the 2020 season where they just got blown out at home or blown out on the road against Alabama, went on to have a great season. But I think that it's just one of those weird early games to where you don't really know both teams that well yet. You don't really know how they're going to perform in these type of games yet. Because you mentioned Alabama, which I'm sorry, I was laughing about that because I heard a commentator goes, Alabama's back. They beat UL Monroe 73-0. I'm like, really? They're back? Because I saw one of the worst performances I've ever seen against a Florida State team. I just thought we're going to do anything this year. So we just don't know yet. I think after this game, we will really understand these teams a lot more. I think especially if Notre Dame has a big day on the ground and Carr has an efficient day from the pocket. If like I said, the defense struggles for A&M, and Marcel Reed's going to have to play catch up, and they just can't keep up the scoring, and they lose by, let's say, 10 points. I think that we can say, well, this was the bad side of the A&M team we maybe expected if they were mistake prone, and then they have now a week before playing Auburn at home to get back right. But if A&M shocks the world and pulls this off, I'm telling you, we're talking about an A&M team that I think can go on a significant run. Because when you win games like this, I've seen it all the time. This can just catapult your season, and so it's It's going to be, I think, one of the better games this weekend. I do think that it's going to be close. I've seen some of the score predictions that are very interesting of, 20. There's some guy had him winning by like 3 scores, Notre Dame. And I'm just like, okay. I don't think a lot of people watch
right, that surprises you, right, Mike?
Yeah. I think it's going to be close. I think like that line of 7 it's going to be right around there. 7, whoever wins the game's like, it's going to be 1 to 1.5 possessions right there. I don't think that we're going to see a blowout in this one.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a turnover game, right? I think it's going to be who keeps the ball, who establishes the run early. I think that you talked about both offensive lines. I think A&M has been better in pass protection personally. I think the run blocking got a little better. They ran for 235 yards against Utah State. But still, there were some issues. There was a lot of rotations, and I think we might see the same with Notre Dame, to where kind of figuring out that line they really want that can really help them in this game and going forward. And Mike Elko has not been shy of moving guys around at all. It's been kind of hilarious to see, and it's worked. And we'll see. I think we'll see the same offensive line, but if there's trouble, if Marshall Reed gets sacked a couple times, or if he's running for his life, you could see more changes at either left tackle or guard, and it's going to be interesting. I'll say that. So
yeah, no, I mean, Notre Dame's thing, like for some reason they love to move tackles to guards, and I think that
Elko's done that too. So
I know. I'm just like, it just confuses me. It's like, well, okay, so we're gonna bring a guy in who's played pretty much one position as
like 7 center,
right? And then like hey, we're gonna move you to the interior, and the responsibilities are significantly different. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I don't get paid to be a coach, so
and who knows? We've seen it work, so.
I mean, we have 2, like Notre Dame has 2, but it always boggles my mind. I'm like, I just don't get,
It's the continuity thing. It's the continuity thing, which I am, because I think a lot of people are comparing this line could be like the 2020 A&M line. And I was like, well, I don't know about that, because that line was literally nobody changed. They all came out. I think 3 of those guys were still in the NFL. I think one of them is still starting. I think Brian McCollum is still the backup center with, I think it's the Steelers right now, which is incredible. I mean, that's the thing. Those guys were legit NFL guys. I think we could say the same, but I think it's a little worrying that we've seen a lot of change, because I think, Robert Borden coming in at left tackle, obviously Trace got hurt, but we did see that a couple times too, like in the first game. Like there were a lot of switching. And I think, and he said that before the season, he just said, well, I got to find what works to establish depth. I don't know if he's going to do that as much, because this game is so crucial, but yeah, I'm with you. I think it's just new age football. I think I think these guys are so athletic that they have the ability to do that. I think they can just trust that, well, he can pass protect, but I also think that we can just switch him inside, because pass protection's harder and run blocking is easier for all offensive linemen, which actually kind of is the case. I mean, I've talked to someone, I think, interview any of them, and they're just like, no, I'd rather run block. I don't want to pass protect, because it takes, I gotta be a dancing bear, and I gotta have really good footwork. But yeah, either way, what are the lines right now, Cannon, I believe, like for the game? I think it's really wagering between 6.5 to 7.
6.5, 7 to 7 points overall. I think what I was doing is I was checking underdog earlier because I usually play the over-unders on like specific points or stats for players. I think it's a little bit more predictive and easier. So I like to play on underdog specifically. So right now you can get let me see if I can pull the exact one up. Like we talked about CJ Carr and Marcel Reed and how like vital and important the quarterback play is going to be and who can win the turnover battle. So if you feel like one of them is going to throw an interception, you can either go higher or lower than 0.5 interceptions thrown for CJ Carr this next week. So if I were to do that now, if I were to go higher, if I think he's going to go interception thrown or lower, it'll give me a percentage on how much I could probably win off of that. So that's what I'm doing right now. I think that if I am able to correctly predict it on these plays, I can win a little bit of cash back myself. So I don't know. That's what I'm looking at right now. I definitely think that if you, I'm not saying to just throw away all your hard-earned money, but if you really do think like you were going to have a predictive play in this game, I highly recommend Underdog. And actually, they are a partner of this show now. So for all of our Aggie fans that are watching, definitely download Underdog with our affiliate link or use the code VOCFB Aggies when you sign up. That is VOCFB AGGIES. And definitely go over to the Notre Dame versus Texas A&M game and make your plays on that. I highly recommend it.
As always, participants must be 21 or older. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, so I think we kind of wrapped up everything today. I think we really talked. We could talk about A&M's defense too, and kind of for any Notre Dame fans who are curious. And I think some of them have self-scouted, some of them have looked at the performance last week. I mentioned before the show, obviously, Texas A&M senior cornerback Will Lee was surprisingly, well, according to PFF, he actually had a pretty good day. That's what the funny thing about Pro Football Focus grades. I think he graded out like 65 total for defense. So they get a really average cover score, but he did allow 3 receptions, a touchdown off of 5 targets. And to be honest, I think a lot of it was just they were targeting him a lot in that game. Des Ricks, opposite of him on the boundary, had a fantastic game, did not allow was not targeted once, I believe. I mean, he pretty much locked down anybody, whoever he went against. I believe Tyreek Chappelle, their senior slot, I think he had a decent day compared to his first struggle against UTSA. But I'm going to be honest, I'm not Notre Dame's wide receiver room is not super impressive to me. I don't think it's a strength of their team. Eli Raridan, their tight end, who I think led the team with about 97 yards. He's a pretty impressive athlete. I don't know how much he's going to be utilized in this game. I think A&M's linebacker rotation is going to do a pretty good job. Cannon, would you probably think Praetorian York's going to be on him? Really tight end coverage.
I think a lot of the times you're probably going to see a mix of in between. I don't think you're really going to see a lot of switches from Torian or Scooby. Yeah. So I know we saw this past week, we really only saw one tight end kind of take over for Notre Dame in that game because you're going to have to remind me, Mike, of his name who went down or who was ruled out for this weekend at tight end. But we saw a couple of big plays coming from who was it at tight end for Notre Dame?
Raridan,
yeah. But we really only saw a second tight end once, I think, catch a pass or was even involved. So I think a lot of the times is whoever's going to cover is just going to be whoever or whichever linebacker is going to be on that side. Maybe we see another nickel corner over there on certain plays, but that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, so it was Kevin Bowman that went down with an injury, season ending, and then he opted to retire right after that. He's dealt with a bunch of injuries, so I think he's just kind of saw the writing on the wall. But yeah, I'm not the Raridan, he had one big catch, but he probably could have had 120, 130 yards, but he dropped about 4 balls against Miami. So I don't expect him to replicate what he did against the Hurricanes, against the Aggies. I think you're going to see a little bit more, attempts towards wide receivers. Malachi Fields was really good at Virginia before he transferred over. Jaden Greathouse, he is absolutely electric when he wants to be. And it's like so polarizing. It's like when you look at what he did the last couple of games of college football playoff, he torched Penn State and Ohio State over 100 yards each game, 3 total touchdowns. Then he had no catches against me. So I think that the game plan is going to be to get him the damn ball. I mean, I just and that's my biggest thing, and that's been my biggest thing with him for his whole Notre Dame career, he is not consistent, not at all. You want a guy that goes out there every day, every game, that's going to catch 3 or 4 passes and get 70, 80 yards, but he's just not doing it.
Yeah, it happens. It sometimes that's just the aim of the game, right? So
and A&M had a guy like that in Noah Thomas. Who
exactly.
He's having a very confusing start to his Georgia career. I'll be honest with you. I think he has 3 catches so far, but I mean, I don't know if that's his fault or if that's Georgia's fault.
That's a different story. So, Mike, thank you so much for coming in on today's show.
Of course.
Where can everybody find you?
You can go to Fighting Irish Wire. That's putting out a bunch of content over there, and then I don't really tweet as much as I used to, but you can follow me. You can follow me on socials at Mike Chen.
Well, we really do appreciate you coming on tonight.
Right, guys.
And, me and Michael should be doing some crossover stuff.
Yeah. I'll send you a message later tonight, Ken.
Yeah, looking for some of that. We did some last year, but I think this is going to be a little more fun. So
yeah.
You get approval. So yeah. So I mean,
right.
Appreciate
Sounds
you joining.
Good. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
All right. So, I think we really just covered everything we can about Notre Dame. I think thanks to Mike, because, we getting that perspective, especially for those of us, like I said, I watched that game. I think a lot of us did, kind of in the background, obviously I was writing at the time. So I was kind of looking up, looking down, looking at what to expect. And he's right to really talk about how, the offensive line struggled, because I do think that after what we saw against Utah State, we can really run through that quickly to the end of the show. But Cassius Howe, having that performance, and really, I'm not going to say that Utah State's left tackle is a lead or anything. I mean, I don't think he's a great player, but
straight up, he just beat him three
times though. I mean, I don't care who the player is. He destroyed that young man.
That's still elite.
It is.
Day of the week.
I hate doing that thing where it's like, well, the player isn't good. No. You won't see that again. The last time it happened was 10 years prior.
10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if we're getting that, I think Elko was very happy to see that. I think he was waiting for his star pass rusher to ascend and take that next step. And so I think that's going to be a big deal in this game, because, like we said earlier, they need to set the edge. They need to be wary of the way that they're going to run offense and the way that they're going to run the ball. And I think they've taken the challenge. I think the reason why it's good to hear from Scooby Williams today is because obviously one of the leaders in this defense has to be a big part of this team to have success. He was, I believe, PFF had him as the second highest rated player. Samuel Mpemba was the highest rated. I think that's kind of funny because
we love it. Hey, Samuel Mpemba had a forced fumble strip sack.
Oh man, we saw that speed
and the fumble recovery on top of his own. Hey, have a play.
Oh yeah, we saw that speed in the preseason. I was like, this dude is an athlete. So I was really glad to see him get on the field. He just happens to be a part of a edge rotation, which is very deep. So you're not gonna get the field as much.
Yeah.
But it is gonna be interesting how much we see him going forward. But this is a game that's I think it's gonna be one of the trenches. I think that personally, A&M's offensive line is really going to take the challenge, because they've been up and down. They've had their moments. They haven't really reached that level of consistency, which I don't dog them for, because I think it takes a couple games to really get, in motion, to really, get back into football playing shape. We've seen the NFL, to be honest with you, a lot of these soft tissue injuries that have happened, because a lot of guys just aren't playing a ton of football yet. They're not in football shape. And, there's no injuries we can report on. So that's not the case. But football shape is a thing. And I think that this game, these guys are really going to come out strong, and they want to prove something. Said it through the first half of the show. So very excited to see that. We can quickly run through the recap. I don't think we have to talk too much about it.
I mean, this past week, Utah State, the battle of the Aggies, right? After last year, where we saw another battle of the Aggies with New Mexico State, right? We got to see a pretty fun offensive showing, especially from Marcel Reed, where he kind of just uncorked it, right? Yeah. He was able to find his receivers pretty easily, apart from a couple throws where you kind of thought, oh, he'll probably get that next time.
Yeah,
like those were the
hype throws, I would call them. Like, he was just kind of energized. He could kind of tell. Yeah.
And apart from, we got to see a lot of the kind of the reserves and the backups in this game, trying to get them ready for what they could be put in against Notre Dame should someone either go down or certain rotations need to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's why I really do look at this score at the end of that game being a little bit closer than people would like it to be. But that's really just because for pretty much a majority of the fourth quarter and some of the third, we really saw those backups play a lot. But we saw Mario Craver go off with a beautiful throw from Miles O'Neill, who I got to say, we've always known he's had an arm. And when he won that quarterback 2 spot, we've had a discussion before, Cameron, where on this show, we were like, is it really going to be Jacob Zeno, who they took in the portal, or is it going to be Miles O'Neill? And when Miles O'Neill ended up taking that job, it was not surprising, but it was very, very welcoming, to say the least, because he gets these valuable reps in, and we saw a beautiful rainbow bomb from Mario Craver, who I believe reached over 21 miles per hour on that touchdown pass and catch.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are really the takeaways. Obviously, I mentioned talking to Mike that, really stopping the run immediately. I think they averaged like 2 yards per carry.
Something like that. It was very minute.
Yeah, and these guys, like, the run fit issues were gone immediately. They were positioned well. I can't think of an explosive run Utah State had. I mean, we got to think that the scoring was just kind of dumb defensive plays. Like, guys were out of position in the secondary. Obviously, Will Lee didn't have the best game, and Utah State got lucky with a couple, and they had that trick play.
Hey, it was a beautiful trick play.
It was. No, I credit them for that. Like, I'm not nothing to take away from them. They worked. Credit to Brock Mendenhall. He had a good game plan. He wasn't going to win that game, but I think for those type of games for that program, you want to put good tape on, and you want to look back and go, look, we can do that against a really good A&M team. Now we can go forward with our season, which, like, that's just how those games work. But I think for A&M, I saw, we talked about the fan base was kind of, 50-50 with what they saw, I think. And look, that's why we had Mike on, to really talk about that. Some of it's kind of mystifying to me that I think a lot of them feel like Notre Dame just beat the crap out of Miami this weekend and they're coming home and no, they're equally desperate. They want to show that they're a really good team, while A&M again is undefeated and I think a little more confident, I would say, because they've accomplished one of their goals so far on the entire preseason, which was to get that passing game going. And so far, Marshall Reed has passed for 509 yards and 7 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, while Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion, I think they have combined 6 receiving touchdowns.
Yeah.
Craver leads the team with 236 receiving yards. He is dynamite. I mean, that kid is unbelievable when he gets blocking. He actually talked about it for the game, that the key to getting those explosive plays is his receivers blocking. Terry Bussey has already shown he's an excellent blocker outfield. Casey Concepcion is not afraid to block. And I think we might see one of our favorite running backs, E.J. Smith, be put in those plays.
What was the problem last year? A lot of the fan base, Aggie fans, it was all the separation that the wide receivers were getting. It was just not enough. That's what their overall complaint was last year. You bring in Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, and you saw Terry Bussey take that touchdown pass this last week. You saw Ashton Betharoma, I think, over 4 or 5 targets alone in this past game. The wide receiver core now, and I cannot stress it enough, is that it has grown significantly in the time since Notre Dame has played A&M last time. We know the Aggies are going to South Bend, but these wide receivers are getting as much separation as possible. They've had growth under this system, especially with Terry Bussey and Ashton Betharoma. Mario Craver has had a relationship with receivers coach Holman Wiggins ever since high school. So there are these pieces that you can build off of, and all that separation is there now. These wide receivers are as dynamic as they could be, and they are ready to put it on the field. And I think that's what Aggie fans are going to see this next week. Is that really ready to get it.
Yeah, I think that's where you can be confident. I think that I do understand some of the worry about the running game, for example, because I do think that, and that's my own thought as well. I'm not just saying that to say it. Is that I do worry that could be the thing that they slow down immediately. That maybe this line just isn't ready to find those openings immediately, and we could easily see a game where Marshall Reed is forced to pass. But the difference from last year to this year is that he actually has legitimate options now. And that's not taken away from guys like Johnny Walker, who very proud made the Bears roster. He was a guy that I think wasn't utilized enough last year, but at the same time, he wasn't the dynamic athlete and he would even say himself, he's more of a X type of wide receiver compared to Concepcion and Craver. They just didn't have that type of quickness and ability to where you can get this passing game going without having to establish the run immediately. We saw that in the first game against UTSA, that they really couldn't run the ball well. They weren't really trying, but they were still shredding that secondary because they just can't cover both those guys all the time. You know that one of them is going to get loose, and that's going to even open things up for Ashton Bethel-Roman, because I do believe that he's going to start making some plays sooner than later. He's still a young player. Yes, he had a great preseason. We've seen that a lot. I'll think back to Javon Thomas was a guy, one of their cornerbacks, who had a really great preseason, had an average season. So it does happen that we see players that have great preseason just not perform up to that level. But I'm not saying that yet, because it's been 2 games. He's got guys in front of him that are going to be the number 1, number 2 targets. But when he is open, that length, that speed downfield, Marshall Reed's going to find him. And I don't think anything compares to, I think outside of Cassius Howe's 3 consecutive sacks, that 34-yard pass to Terry Bussey was a thing of beauty. And I think it really accentuates that Marshall Reed has taken that next step. That was one of the crispest, most accurate throws I've seen. It was a filthy route by Terry Bussey.
It was awesome.
For anybody who criticized him because of routes he was running in practice, okay, this kid knows what he's doing. He is one of the better route runners. He's a bigger body now. He's going to be a threat as well. But I do think in this game, he's going to be a big priority in the blocking game. I think he's going to really help open things up on those. I do expect A&M to run, a couple more screens here and there. They now have the players to do it, right? They have the running back group to do it with Ruben Owens and those screens. But now they have Craver, where they can really open things up, get the ball in his hands. Same with Concepcion. I do think, one of the units I'm looking at as well is special teams. A&M special teams.
Yes, great point.
And it is great to see that, because we remember the Jimbo Fisher years. Didn't have a special teams coach, didn't really prioritize it. They had a lot of problems there. That's such an NFL thing sometimes for some of those guys that have some special team background, and they go, I don't really need a coach. I'll just do it myself. A lot of college coaches do that too. But like Elko's looking at it from a professional standpoint, he brought in Patrick Daughtry, who's been fantastic, who again, utilizing the athletes he has on his team, obviously having Casey Concepcion return punts. He's already had a touchdown this season in the opener. I expect more great returns from him going forward. And I think just ball positioning is going to be huge. I think Tyler White and punter is going to be huge. You know what, though? The one position, and I think you'll agree with me, is kicker right now, because I will say that game had me a little on edge about, Zirkle and Randy Bond. I think that, Zirkle did miss an extra point. I don't know who the better field goal kicker is yet, right? I think it's still Zirkle, but Bond did come in, I believe, for a field goal time.
He did come in.
So I don't know. Elko didn't really talk about it this week, but, it will be interesting. I do expect Zirkle to be the starter still, but, I don't know if he's made his mind up completely on some of the further yardage field goals yet. I think Zirkle has the bigger leg, but I don't know how this game's going to go, right? I don't know if it's going to come down to kicking, right? But I do think he has 2 good options there. Either way, I think that people kind of freaked out over that missed extra point that happened. I saw one the other day, I think during the Monday Night Football game, where they missed the extra point. So that happens. It's not guaranteed anymore, but yeah, I think we can be confident going into this game. We're going to give our final score predictions here in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm not uneasy about it. I've been looking forward to this game as a football fan in general. I just think that it's going to be if both teams show up, I think it could be a fantastic game. I think it'd be a very low-scoring defensive battle. But I do fear deep down in my coverage of this team over the years that maybe A&M just doesn't show up for the moment. But you know what? That kind of went away after really hearing Mike Elko talk today, after hearing Mario Craver and Scooby Williams talk today. There's just a different level of swagger. There's a different level of understanding of the moment, that's a little different. I'm not saying that previous teams didn't have that, but I don't know. I think that, I think that this group just understands that to be taken seriously going forward, you have to win these type of games, and you have to prove that you can contend with anybody in the country.
Yeah, and this is a good way to start it off. If they get a win at Notre Dame in South Bend, that could be the catalyst that we said earlier that could propel them forward as a program and in year 2 under Mike Elko.
Yeah. So, all right. So, what's your score prediction? Because that, it's I've been mulling over this for the last 3 days.
Yeah, it's a tough one to predict because you could see whichever prediction besides maybe a 3-touchdown blowout, like you had said earlier. But I have given a lot of thought. And which way am I leaning? Is it more? Do I think Jeremiah Love is going to have a little bit of a day against A&M, or do I believe that Marcel Reed and their ground game is going to kind of give Notre Dame problems up the middle? I think it's more of a grinded out game than even a lot of people are already saying. So I think at the end of this game, I think the final score is probably going to be 23-17. I don't know if that means that the Aggies or Notre Dame is on top.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same with you. I'm more 24-21 right now, and I agree with you 100%. I think because I have at Aggies Wire, everybody else who covers A&M, I think we're all on the same page here that what team are we going to see show up? What offense are we going to see show up? Because if A&M can control the trenches, if they can run the ball effectively, game over, in my opinion. I think that they are going to be one of the
controlling.
Yeah, that's the thing. That if they can do that, I give A&M a significantly higher chance to win this game. If they can't do that and they're forced to pass, I'm not saying I just said it previously that I think Marcel Reed has the options now to get that done, but we've seen that. I do believe Notre Dame secondary is pretty good. I think they have star power there. I think they were exposed a little bit, so there are opportunities there for Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver, even Terry Bussey at this point to expose them. But it is one of those things where I don't care who the quarterback is. We've seen really good quarterbacks struggle at Notre Dame Stadium. We've seen Caleb Williams have a horrible game, I believe. I think that's going back to when he was playing there a couple years back.
Yeah, that would have been back in 22.
Yeah, and had a really, really bad game there. So it happens to good quarterbacks too. It's but again, Xavier Watts, I don't think he's there anymore. So that was one of the interception guy for them. That was really the turnover king for them. So I'm a little up and down with their secondary. I just don't know, because it's kind of like A&M secondary, right? We think they're good, but we haven't seen them go against really, really elite competition. We're going to see that against Auburn later in this year when they go against the top wide receiver duo. But there's just a lot of unknowns there. But I agree. I think it's going to be a very close game because I think the passion, I think the fact that A&M lost the way they did last year, where I believe that game was tied. I think it was 13 to 13 at one point, 10 to 10. Yeah. And, A&M had their chances, right? If they would have had a better offense, they would have won that game, I believe. And if they just hadn't allowed those two plays. And I think that's stuck in Mike Elko's head of, if we would have won that game to start, who knows, right? It's the same thing as if Connor Wegman didn't have the shoulder injury. Who knows? It doesn't matter at this point. But I think that's stuck there, and I think he really wants to win this game, not just for his future with A&M, but for his team, because he knows what this can do to a team going forward. Like we said, this could be the primary catalyst to really just go into SEC play, have a ton of confidence, and win a ton of games. And I mean, win at least 9 or 10 games and get to the college football playoff. I mean, this is just start, because we saw this with Notre Dame last year where they won in Kyle Field. Yes, they had a hiccup against Northern Illinois, but that hiccup propelled them to go undefeated and go all the way to the championship game. So I'm not saying that's what's happening in A&M, but I'm going to say Notre Dame takes the game 24-21. That's just my gut feeling right now. I don't want to be that guy, and I'm not going to be that guy. I'm just being realistic with you. I think that
you're just going with your gut, and that's what the numbers in your gut are saying. I think
I just agree with Mike, right? Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
I think now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, I'm going to take the opposite. I think I'm going to stick with the original 23-17, but I think I'm going to go A&M edges it out in that one possession game.
Yeah. And that could easily happen. That's the thing. This is going to be a possession game. I don't think it's going to be similar to Notre Dame's game against Miami, but what for me personally, if I saw a grinded out game with A&M coming out on top on the road in one of the toughest environments, historic environments to play, you will not see me be down on this team the rest of the season. That's for sure. Like I'm not going to be a homer. I'm not doing that. I have journalistic integrity, but at the same time, I am not going to count A&M out of any game because I'll tell you something that's funny. ESPN FBI would do a lot of their updates all the time. Well, they had A&M is 2-0, right? They had A&M going 9-3 before the season. Now they have A&M finishing 7-5. So that's the thing. These type of games matter so much, even though A&M can technically afford to lose this game, whereas Notre Dame can't. So I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I cannot wait. I know you and I are both going to be texting the entire time throughout. I'll be doing live coverage, but yeah, it's I don't know. I'm going to stick with it now. I might change later in the week. I'll do my Aggies Wire predictions, release them on Friday. But right now, I'm going to stick with Notre Dame. But if things change for some reason, that might switch. But right now, I think they pull it out. I just think they pull it out. I think there's going to be a little more desperate.
Just a little bit.
I mean, I always go with the home team. I don't know.
Thank you guys. Thank for everybody who tuned in tonight to the live show. As always, you can find both Cameron and myself every Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're going to be definitely talking about this one next week as A&M has a bye week after this. So definitely tune in next week for our recap and everything going forward. As always, you can find Cameron at Cameron Honesty on X, a part of the Aggies Wire, posting for USA
Today Sports.
USA Today Sports. Sorry, I have something in the back of my throat.
Sentences, you're good.
But yeah, he'll like he said, he'll be following up with live updates as the Aggies go up to South Bend. And you can always find myself over on X at Torres Cannon. And over on Patreon for your recruiting intel for football and basketball at Bell Tower Intel. So any final thoughts, Cameron?
No, just want to thank Mike again. Like I said, we're going to do some crossover stuff with Fighting Irish or our Aggies Wire this week. Should be fun to get, a little more in depth. I think he went pretty in depth, but I think the best way to understand your opponent as a fan is, and I'm not saying go read your articles. That's the best way. No, it's to look at what they did, look at the roster, compare the strengths and weaknesses, and I think you'll have a better time watching the game because you won't be shocked. Like I know a lot of fans are sometimes when certain areas of, don't look as good as you thought. But we do our best job there to prepare you for it. And yeah, it should be fun. But thanks again for Mike coming on the show for the second time. He's fantastic as usual. So
sweet.
All right, guys, as usual, like Kenan said, we'll be back next Tuesday, and he did say it's going to be a bye week going into that, so we have a lot to talk about, especially if the Aggies win or lose. We'll have takes and what they have to do to prepare for Auburn in week 5, I believe, which will be a very big game, especially if they lose. I'll say, okay, I don't want to say that. No, I'm putting it in the universe. But if you lose, then yes, it'll be a big game because it's the first SEC game, and they'll have to rebound, blah, blah, blah. We'll talk about it. So, again, guys, gig as usual. Thanks for joining, and we'll be back next Tuesday.